What was the incident that made you cut somebody close out of your life? They became vehement anti-vaxxers, and I just couldn't listen to their baloney anymore. Their baloney has a first name, it's Asles. The second time I've heard that he was flirting with my girlfriend, a different girl than the first time. A friend doesn't do that, so he was demoted quite instantly. I smashed my dad's iPad when I was 9. I've not really seen him since. I think he cut you out of his life, not the other way round. I know it was just the first thing that came to my head. Probably a work iPad. He got fired because of the work data that was on it got destroyed. He obviously tried to find another job and failed, became homeless, overdosed and died. Yep, most probably. He just went out to buy another one. He's still waiting in line at the Apple store to get a new one. If this counts, cool, but once when I was little a former friend stole one of my Beyblades. Yep, that's it. A friend of my brother stole my shiny Blasto eyes. I'm still salty about that one. To my brother CR, he was no longer a friend after this incident. Yeah, someone stole a couple Pokemon X cards from me, never trading with them again. My brother lost a lifelong friend at 13 when the friend stole his foil Charizard. The silver lining of going through tough times is that you'll find out who your real friends are, and until you go through it together you can't really say they're your real friends. True. Worst part is, if no one is there. Nah, it's the part where you realize that you can rely on yourself, make good personal relationship decisions after that point, and be the one person in the room of 1,000 people who actually understands that you can count your true friends on one hand. Sorry, you're right. I said they cause I'm actually super alone. My bad. I want to change my mindset but it's hard. Thanks though. It will get better, I swear. Sometimes you need to make a change, or wait for a change, but it will eventually come, or there'll be an opportunity. Just recognize it and grab it. This is actually happening right now. Ex of mine and I were still in contact. We had an argument, and she is now scoping out my friends on Facebook, and talking about how she's going to send my nudes to them. I just blocked her on everything, so hopefully this is quick and relatively painless. She lives in another country now, so I have no legal recourse. Wow. I hope things get better for you. I can see why you guys aren't together anymore. Thanks very much. I've not heard anything yet, though I have been avoiding my phone somewhat. The way I see it is once she's done what she's going to do, she can't hold it over my head anymore. They started engaging in behavior around my kids which reminded me a little bit too strongly of the way I was treated by a child molester when I was little. And they tried to get my kids to ignore rules that I had set and replace them with their own rules. Wise choice. Good for you for noticing. What kind of behavior is that? I was molested as well, but due to awful parents, he didn't exactly have to be sneaky about it, so I don't have any real pointers. As a result of that, I get very paranoid every time a guy is alone with my nieces when they're my responsibility. For the sake of my mental health, I don't worry when they're elsewhere. If you search grooming abuse on Google it will give you red flags to look out for. I basically saw all of these, in one form or another. There's one sign that so far hasn't ever let me down. If you just feel uncomfortable about their interactions with the kids, and maybe get a sick feeling to your stomach, then trust your gut. I've had multiple instances where I ended an acquaintance because of this, and sure enough saw pretty scary news reports later. For me it wasn't a single incident, but the fact that she was always incredibly negative and refused to get counseling for the issues that she was going through. Every single time we hung out she would spend 2 hours complaining about the same 4 things over and over. One of them being that people never stuck around in her fellow vertical bar. At first I felt sympathy for her, then tried to suggest counseling to help talk through her issues. Then I got frustrated, and eventually I slowly let the relationship die out. I don't want that kind of toxicity in my life. She sounds like my ex. She pushed everyone who cared about her in her life away through her actions, and then treats whoever she gets romantic with as a piece of the puzzle that completes her, and can understand her and the pain of losing every around her in her life, until she stops being infatuated, and inevitable pushes them away too while finding a way to spin the story in her head as them abandoning her. I cut out a friend who couldn't make time to see me. I'm in the military and come home for leave once a year. I had lunch with my friend and invited her for drinks with another friend of mine that same night. She told me she couldn't make it because she was too tired to go out, but then that night invited me out to another part of town. Really haven't spoken to her since. Every year it was like pulling teeth to get together with her. This was just the final straw. My son was 9 or 10. He smashed my iPad. Didn't really see him much after that. The Ulredid switch. Hold on. Going to get cigarettes. She was becoming toxic. Started neglecting her daughter for whatever guy was flavor of the week. So I cut her off completely. Haven't spoken to her in about 4 years. My ex didn't like my best friend and tried to cut her out of my life by isolating me. Seriously underestimated our friendship. My aunt hired movers and neither offered them water nor tipped them, and when nature called, she told them to use the bushes. A friend whom I could have called a sibling, known for 14 years, began to show signs of narcissism. Whenever she began to date someone, they would soon break up because the emotional abuse the other person experienced because of her. For a while I was there and supported her and tried to help her, but recently she began to date a guy who just got off drugs and suffers from depression. She is emotionally abusing the poor guy, getting him more and more depressed, and giving him the feeling he is worthless without her. I cut ties with her, because it could have been any moment she would just snap on me as well. And I don't want to be the person who supports an abuser. They developed a crush on me. I explained that I was flattered, but also married, and not interested. One night, when we'd both been drinking, they made a move. I had to cut off the friendship completely. About as fun as breaking up with someone. When I realized they only contacted me when they needed something. My former best friend said coldly, "You're not the only one with problems," after I opened up to her for the first time about my depression and anxiety. At that point, I was crying almost every day for little to no reason. I was losing weight, and I was withdrawn from most things. I had never in my life felt so rejected and embarrassed by someone. When she said that, at that point on, I realized how one-sided our friendship was, and I made the decision to stop contacting her. Sadly, she never made efforts to contact me, and we just sort of stopped. I'm still sad about it, because I don't feel like I received any closure, but it is what it is, I guess. Turns out he was an in-the-closet racist, even though he aspires to be black, and had a best friend of 10 plus years who was, yup you guessed it, black. My best friend of 17 years. She has always struggled with mental illness. Things got rough for her, and she turned to alcohol. Ended up making some bad decisions that put her and her kid in danger. I told her we couldn't be friends unless she could admit she has a problem with alcohol. She did not want to admit that. I had to cut out people who continue to support Trump. Insufferable ignorance is not something I want in a friend. You can't cast your political beliefs aside in order to be a friend to someone. My friends and I have contradicting political beliefs, but we are able to put aside our differences, ignore it and enjoy some cold ones. I used to work with this fellow who was really friendly and talkative, but the more I got to know him, the more I realized he only talked to me when he wanted something. I had to cut him out because it was very draining. I never asked anything from him more than friendship, and they wanted me to help them without any thought. I'm Catholic and married a Jewish girl. Not only did they not come to the wedding, but they messaged my wife on Facebook about how they couldn't be part of our lives if we had kids, and didn't baptize them. I've only ever been compelled to cut a person out of my life on very rare occasions, especially if they're close to me. I'm a firm believer that tolerance and endurance is key to a strong social life. Nobody is perfect. Everybody has got their thing, and it takes an egregious error for me to be totally done with a person. But the most notable one that comes to mind is when my girlfriend cheated on me. I love this person, but our relationship became way too one-sided. Stories became all about them. When you start a conversation about your new stories, they're gonna one you up. In the end it'll always be about them. I love this person, but bit by bit I feel like just another character on a background you wouldn't notice. Whenever they walk in on the room, I feel so unheard. I feel suffocated. I feel you on this one friend. I recently cut ties with my ex whom I care deeply for, because I noticed how one-sided our relationship was. She would belittle me and constantly put me down, while always telling me that I'm selfish and that I lacked empathy. I believed her for a long time, and it tore me apart to think that that's how I was to her. But one day I realized she was wrong. I've learned much about myself through this experience and proud of the person I'm becoming. I hope you find solace in knowing that there will be personal growth in it for you, and that you will become something beautiful in this process. Best of luck. I'm not sure if this is considered cutting out, but I stopped contacting friends that I only spoke with if I was the one to start conversations. None of them changed their ways and I learned who my real friends were. Relationships shouldn't be one-sided. My first serious GF left me for one of my friends. Later found out that my other friend and his NGF had set up the whole thing and were talking in my GF's ear about how she needed to break up with me and date the other. So she did. It devastated me. I cut ties with those guys soon after. So out of the 4 main friends I had at the time, 3 of them tried to get with my ex. Scumbags. My dad said the original trilogy was better than the prequels. My mother neglected to tell me when my 2-year-old had a seizure whilst in her care and tried to make it my fault. Went completely NC after that and don't regret it. Friends for 15 years. When I realized that deep down this person was extremely insecure and acted mostly in the motivation of dragging others down with them. I was still with my ex. At the time I was depressed and suicidal. I was watching some movie and looking up info on how to check myself into a mental hospital to get help. His mom killed herself a few years ago, so I thought I'd get some support. I told him that I was so depressed I don't know what to do with myself anymore, and I'm scared of what I might do. He looked at me and asked if I was feeling sad. I said no, and he went back to playing Diablo. I called my mom and moved out the next day. Never told him why, not sure if he finally gets why, and I don't care. A close friend got a girlfriend, and suddenly nobody else mattered. He was with her 24/7, and he was ignoring everybody, and at the moment, when I needed him the most, he rejected me. Of course when they broke up, guess who he needed? I didn't invite a friend to my very private secret wedding. Only one friend each and our close family went. Safe to say we no longer speak as she went off on one about how selfish I am. I had a close friend. She was very special to me. We used to chat a lot at nights. She liked to talk about her issues with work, her overprotective family, etc. Then one day I made a mistake at work, and I was feeling terrible, since it was my fault. That night I told her that I needed to vent and talk about me and my terrible day, and she just said something like, "No, that's boring. Let's better talk about something else." Then I realized that I was always for her, no matter what, but she never cared about me. I told her that, about how I realized our friendship was not equal, said goodbye and left. I confided in a good friend over text that her friend was making me anxious by always negatively commenting on my clothes, choice of words, overall personality, and she sent him the screenshots. He then texted me telling me what a horrible person I was, and that I was lying for attention, because I was jealous they were becoming close. My social anxiety has improved so much with therapy and meds, but that still hurts, and is a big reason why I'm slow to trust my friends, even those who love me. My best friend came over to my house with a gun, wanted to load it. I didn't let him bring the ammo inside, and spent the next hour also pointing the gun at himself, at me, pulling the trigger whilst it was pointing at me and at himself. I eventually got him to leave, and I literally moved, and never spoke to him again. She started doing astrology, became convinced the Jews were the cause of the state of her home country, and had several unnecessary operations, because she didn't listen to medical professionals, but took the advice of a random dentist with same country of origin. And that was it. I never got to talk about my problems _. When I had heard all that and also argued against or questioned some of it, I realized that it had gone too long since our last hangout, and apart from me, she just shut out people who disagreed with her too bad. She was fine. But the crazy. We'd been best friends for a couple of years. During a drunken lapse in judgment we slept together. He said afterwards that we couldn't be together in case someone better came along. Then we went off to uni. When we got back we met up, but pre-agreed it'd be like old times and purely platonic. But he demanded that I'd sleep with him. When I rejected him, he pinned me down and insisted. Luckily I managed to plead my way out of it.